Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Magical Learning Podcast for this week. If you're watching the video, you'll notice some pretty cool features, but we'll get to them soon. Let's actually just start with our man of the hour. We've got to check in on him. Graham, how are you going at the moment?
I'm good, Jess. Not sure about the man of the hour thing, but anyway, I'll cop it. It's Friday. I'm getting there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm becoming accustomed to living life face down whilst still breathing. That just sounded weird.
You should explain that.
Probably should.
Mhm.
Yeah. So my surgery last weekend means that I have to try and spend as much time as possible with my face towards the ground rather than the opposite direction. So I've got a gas bubble in my eye, which is holding my retina on the back of my eyeball until it sort of heals itself. And apparently lying on my back is exactly the worst thing to do. So there you go. Fun times. I have an eye patch for those of you who won't be getting the video of this. Lucky you. So I have an eye patch, but don't yet have a parrot, but it's coming.
And of course, if you are listening to this and you are getting retina rehab, you can also listen to this face down. It's one of the benefits of the ML podcast.
Excellent point, Jess. Excellent.
So you can go through the back catalogue there. But anyway, we're glad to see that you're at least upright and here today. So thanks for being on the call today, Graham. Great to have you.
Thank you.
Danette, how are you going this week?
Yeah, good. We're back home. Graham's operation, which was an emergency one, was a success. So that was pretty awesome. And while we were in Sydney, the hotel that we stayed at, the Sir Stamford near Circular Quay, upgraded us to a suite. So we were very lucky to stay in a suite for 4 days. So very appreciative of the Sir Stamford Circular Quay.
Beautiful. Great shout out. John Scotland is with us this week. How are you going, John?
I'm good, Jess. Very good. Danette, I don't know whether that operation was a success. He still looks the same.
I'll pay that one, John.
Yeah, all good, Jess.
Graham, you're on mute. I can see Graham wants to come back with a zinger, but
It's all right. I just realised it wasn't that funny. Something about making fun of a one-eyed man when he's sitting. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Let's move on.
And finally, we've got Leggers back this week. Kicked off.
Hello.
You kicked off your ML podcast journey last week, but it's good to see you back. How you going, Leggers?
Oh yeah, pretty good. Just having my morning smoothie. I did a workout before this, so yeah, that's where I'm at.
Well, great stuff. And I'm also going well, so let's jump into this week. And it is this week's topic is getting out of a rut. Okay, so this may be something that people may have experienced over the past couple of years with things being sort of unusual, or you might just experience it generally being in a rut. So this week we're going to look at what it is to be in a rut and then how to get out of it. So let's start here with why do we get stuck in a rut? And I might start with you, Graham. Why do people get stuck in a rut?
This is comfortable. I think that's probably the easiest answer. Our brain likes a sense of certainty, and being in a rut, in a manner of speaking, is it provides that sort of sense of sameness, that sense of certainty. I know what's coming up. I know what my life looks like. So I'm comfortable.
Great answer. That's perfect. Very interesting as well. I love that answer. Danette, why do we get stuck in a rut?
So I love Graham's answer, and maybe on top of that, we may have been experiencing health or mental health challenges. So that sort of certainty is, just helping us to navigate through that. And the other one I think is we maybe haven't been taking regular breaks or holidays. So we're just tired. Can be another reason why. So they're my bits.
Great stuff. Yeah, I think this is all feeding into a great sort of answer, and hopefully people can start to imagine in their mind. John, why do you think people get stuck in ruts?
Yeah, I think most people innately don't like a lot of change. So therefore, you're always doing the same sorts of things. When you have kids, having that routine is very, very important, because that gives a surety to the kids as well as to what's going on. They know what's happening, and therefore we just get into the same patterns over and over again. And that's, I think Graham's answer really covered most of it, but that's my take.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I think that's good. Talking about the positivity of routines, but also I guess it's a double-edged sword there. And Leggers, why do we get stuck in ruts, do you think?
Well, I think routine is fine, but a rut is slightly different to a routine. So I feel like the difference may be like not including self-care as part of that routine, where like you sort of focus on yourself and do things for yourself as opposed to the greater good or like what is expected of you per day, which I think can lead to people feeling like lethargic and tired. I also think like some people feel like they're in like a rut with their job or something because they're not really doing something that they find meaningful or that inspires them or motivates them. And so I feel like you can feel like you're in a bit of a rut in those if you don't really know what to do about that, but you're just kind of living out day in, day out the same day because that's what's expected of you. But you're just not putting enough time for yourself.
And I guess it's an interesting thing, sort of correlating a lot of those things where it is kind of what was mentioned with like the two sides of a routine where it's positive and negative. And then I guess it is blending with that extra part of, where you're not adding your own self-care into that routine creates this. Sometimes it just needs a bit of a shake up. So anyway, thanks for all those answers. Very good. I thought that was very concise. I feel like very dense. So thank you very much, everybody, for that one. All right. So for the next one, what are some signs that you're in a rut? Because I think sometimes we realize we're in a rut after it's a little bit too late and you're already sort of feeling a bit stressed out. So I might start with John with this one. What are some signs that you might be in a rut?
I think, just building on what Leggers had to say, there was a saying, and I don't know where I picked it up from. I think it's from a desk calendar somewhere, but the only difference between a rut and a grave is the depth. So if you want to think on that, but the signs that you're in a rut, that you're tired, that you're not looking forward to what is coming next, and you know what's coming next, and it might just be, I have to go to work. And part of getting into that routine, especially again, as we grow and leave our teens, we get a job. We think we're going to change the world and realise it's not as simple as that. So it's, we get a job that's going to pay us some money, and then we, buy a car, buy a house, have kids or whatever, and suddenly you find that you need that money to be able to maintain your existence, and it's very difficult to get out of. And so suddenly you're in a rut. So if you're not looking forward to what's ahead of you, are you in a rut? Are you, is there something that you can do to help and look after yourself and make a difference, make a change?
Yeah, I love that, John. That's a great answer. And I think it also, I love that answer because it gives us a more background thing as to why, this can all kind of sneak up on you and you're not entirely sure. So thanks so much for that. Leggers, what are some signs that you might be in a rut?
Well, I totally agree with John. I think like if you're sort of not looking forward to the next day and you know what that day is going to be, you may need to start considering that you might be in a rut, because a lot of people may not even be aware that they're sort of in this sort of a situation. They just feel really tired, and they just have to keep doing the same thing. But I also think like if you have certain parts about your life that you don't enjoy, like let's just say XYZ, but you're not doing anything actively to change them as well. I think like if you don't have the motivation to change the things around you, I feel like you're going to feel like you're in a bit of a rut.
Yeah, great answer. Thanks for that, Leggers. Danette, what are some signs that you might be in a rut?
So probably two in there, sort of adding to what John and Leggers say. So one role I was in, it wasn't challenging me, and I knew I was in a rut when I started to say, is it Friday yet? And that could be on the Monday. So it's just that, no, I'm not really getting stimulated, motivated, etc. The other one for me is when my energy, my spark seems to sort of be a little bit less, that's usually a sign that I need to change things up a bit to get out of the rut. So great question. Great answers too from John and Leggers.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really painting a great picture, because I think for me, when I think of being in a rut, when I was thinking about this question, I wasn't necessarily thinking about the surrounding factors, but I love that these are being brought in as well. So it's helped building a picture for me as well. So hopefully for the listener as well. Graham, what are some signs that you're in a rut?
I don't know if I can add much to the answers that have already been offered. The obvious sort of cliches around being in your comfort zone. So I guess one sign that you could be in a rut is that you never feel uncomfortable. You never feel that you're doing something or about to do something that is different enough to, to amp up your adrenaline level. There are sayings out there about do one thing every day that scares you. And so I guess if you become aware over time that you're never in that space where you're doing something that's so different to everything you've done before, that it's a little bit like having butterflies, but sometimes the butterflies are more like V8 moths because it's so different to what you've done in the past that it's really going back to what Danette said about that spark. It's really amplifying your spark at that point. So the circle of comfort thing. If I never feel uncomfortable in what I'm doing day in, day out, that would suggest that I'm probably in a rut.
I wonder if some of it may have to do with, if you're not used to being uncomfortable, then that's generally a positive thing, as because we're basically just an animal. So it's good if we're feeling relaxed, but then obviously it can be too much. So yeah, it's such an interesting balance to try and strike, because you want to be feeling comfortable as much as possible, but obviously it's too much of a good thing kind of scenario. I was wondering if there's also some part of it where you may feel like you're in a rhythm that doesn't necessarily work with your body. Like, this may come back to some of the reflection and journaling type stuff, but I think, which you guys talk about a lot, and maybe you can even touch on a little bit, but I think that being able to monitor yourself over a longer period may also help you define, maybe I'm not in a rhythm that works with how I want to work as well. And I was also thinking maybe a sign that you might be starting to get into a rut is that you're complaining about work constantly, like maybe like a sign that you may be starting to get there as well. But yeah, no, I mean, I thank everybody for all these great answers. So now this is the important part, and I guess this is what people would be listening to. Question number 3, which is how to get out of a rut. This is I guess the most important part of the podcast. So let's start with you, Graham. What are some ways to get out of a rut?
Well, I think that one of the easier ways to get out of a rut is to make a conscious commitment to do one thing different. So it doesn't have to be, getting out of a rut doesn't require that you change your entire life, because that's too big, too hard, and generally will not succeed longer term. But maybe it's just, again, doing one thing differently. So it's having a different conversation with somebody, or having a conversation with a different person. It's watching a movie that I normally wouldn't watch, or reading a book from an author that I normally wouldn't go near. It might be trying a different food. For one of our clients, it was buying a couple of different ingredients when they went grocery shopping and then cooking a new dish that included those ingredients. Ultimately, I think it's just, think of a relatively, I was going to say safe, but a relatively safe to get started way that you can do something or experience something different. And then at the back end of that, the only other suggestion I would have is make sure you celebrate when you do that thing. I think that's hugely important to link, the feel-good chemicals, dopamine, serotonin in our brain with the fact that I did something different. Yeah, just start.
And I think that celebration concept's really good as well. I think that's and Danette's doing the party dance for those listening right now. But maybe it might just be worth Graham or Danette talking about the benefit of celebrating these kind of things, because I know it's not something that is super regularly encouraged, I guess, day to day, but maybe just a quick idea about what that does.
So I'm happy to answer that one, Jez. So we know that when we take action, so part of our emotions is it guides us to take action. When we do it, if we celebrate, it puts those beautiful feel-good chemicals that Graham was talking about into our bloodstream, which actually make us want to do it again. So celebrating even a tiny change is going to lift your energy. And so it's really hard. And anyone who's not watching on the video, it's a bit hard to imagine, but anyone who's watching the video, when we do this, if you look at everyone on the webinar, pretty much everyone's smiling, or on the video that's here with us. So doing something a little bit goofy, it doesn't have to be my party dance, actually makes people around you smile as well. So it becomes then contagious, which can make us, get that little bit of a oomph to want to keep going. So it's quite helpful.
Yeah, awesome. Well, that's awesome. Do you have any other tips for how people can get out of a rut?
Yes. So just one really simple one, which I got from a book called Love People, Use Things. And it's written by the two guys who are the minimalists. And they talked about, and it comes to John's point about people get stuck with a role, get paid so much, and so then they don't know how to get out of it, is to look to simplify and declutter. Because anything you've got around you, whether it's in your head clutter or it's physical clutter, it actually drains us. So you might notice that you've got piles of, whether it's books, whatever it is around your house, where you go, oh, it's a bit cluttered. So moving them out gives us that higher energy as well. So that's just one simple thing you could do.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. That's a great one. John, what are some ways that you can get out of a rut?
Yeah, I'm very much lined up under Graham, that just do one thing, and again, whether it's buying something different at the shops, drive a different way to work, because we get into our patterns where we will drive exactly the same way to work, we'll leave home at exactly the same time and do the same thing. Do something different, drive a different way. And then that celebration, are you where you want to be? First of all, you've got to recognize that something needs to change. So, because if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. And if you can recognize you're in a rut, there is suddenly something you need to change. Start with one thing, start with something simple, celebrate it. As you said, Jez, we are an animal, and we learn that if we do something and we get a reward, we're going to want to do it again and again and again. Whereas if we put our hand on live electricity, you learn pretty quickly not to do it. So it's, celebrate the wins.
Yeah, that's it. And if you are in a rut that involves live electricity, that's a pretty powerful place to be. So thanks for that, John. Leggers, how do you get out of a rut?
I guess just to build off the answers that everyone else has been saying, I think it's important to identify what brings you joy and also what does not bring you joy. So like, what should I, keep doing? What should I start doing? And what should I stop doing? And if you can identify these aspects, I feel like you can be like, okay, I need to stop talking to Barbara from HR every morning because she ruins my day, and maybe you can have a different kind of conversation with her, or you could set boundaries even with yourself. You don't have to have that conversation with her, but that's just an example. We don't have a Barbara in HR. But I think it's important that you sort of identify ways that you can make small adjustments in your life that could potentially bring a lot more joy to your day, which would potentially make you feel less like you're in a rut. I also think if you've been in a rut for a really long time and you don't really know where to start, I also think therapy is a great way to, start your journey out of the rut, because it can be very hard to do sometimes by yourself, and seeking professional help is good. So those are my recommendations.
Yeah, love that. Love that. All great answers. And I think it's great. I think all of them gave a different perspective on sort of how to get out of a rut and different sensations around it. John, your answer really reminded me of the movie Click with Adam Sandler, of all movies. But the point of that movie was that he could just fast forward all the boring parts of his life. But kind of being in, and what happened was when he was doing that, there was like a sort of just like person who was in a rut that was basically replacing him. So it's just like was at the dinner table, doesn't really talk, just does his own thing. And the point was, that that's actually the moments that he could have done something different and interacted with his family or whatever, but instead his life was in fast forward mode, so he could just skip to the fun parts. But being in a rut sometimes can just feel like you've just put your life kind of you're in sleep mode almost, and so it's like you're just trying to get to the next part. But I think that one thing that sometimes I find that can be good as well, just as a tip from my end, is that sometimes it can be good to do something that you used to like doing, but you haven't done in a while. I used to like painting little like Warhammer models. And then recently I felt like I was in a rut and I was like, I haven't painted anything probably in 10 years. So I'll just give this a go just for fun. Doesn't have to be good, but it can just open up an old part of your brain that might help spark other things. So thank you for all the answers. We had some really, really good ones. I'll just go quickly around and get some final thoughts from everyone. I might start with you, Leggers. What are some final thoughts on getting out of a rut?
I think like start small, set out maybe a small plan for yourself to begin with, and just do, little, the 1% every day if you need to start transitioning out. But just make yourself aware that you may be in a rut, and be aware of like what you can potentially do to get yourself out of it.
Awesome. And I think this podcast is a good place to start. So thanks for that, Leggers. Great work.
Thank you, Jez.
John, final thoughts on getting out of a rut?
I think when we think about a rut, we think negative things. So find something that brings you joy. As Leggers said earlier, I think her answer was great. What is that thing that can give you joy? And whether it's painting Warhammer or something that you haven't done for 10 years or whatever, but something small, start small and get help if you do need it.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for that. Danette, final thoughts on getting out of a rut?
I'm pretty sure John sneaked a look at my answers because that was exactly what I was going to say. So one thing I'd add is to remind yourself that this too will pass. So don't get too upset about the fact that you've just become aware you're in a rut, and remind yourself it will pass. And I suppose to add to the questions and the reflections that Leggers and John were just talking about, maybe think about, is there something I've always wanted to learn? And maybe just even get online, watch a masterclass or something, just to start that spark again. Great question, Jez.
Yeah, and just quickly off that, I agree with you. And I've actually recently had a look at myself and my own cooking ability and gone, I think I can get better at this, even though I can cook, if I need to. There's always more cuisines. Like I cooked some Louisiana style food last night. Never done that before, but you can always improve stuff.
It was so
good. What did you cook, Jez?
Just like these prawns in butter kind of thing, but it was pretty good. I was impressed. So anyway, you can always just try some new things. So thanks for that, Danette. It rings true to me a little bit there. And Graham,
I don't know whether it was good, but I'll try it. Let you know whenever you want to do it.
Yeah, sure. That'd be great.
You're catering the next quarterly planning day, Jez. Thank you.
Oh, no problem. Sounds good. And finally, Graham, final thoughts on getting out of a rut?
I'm actually just going to pinch some of the responses from others in the group. And I think one of the comments from Leggers about ask for help. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter what the rut looks or feels like, but we don't succeed or thrive or find joy in isolation from everyone else on the planet. So ask for help. It's a beautiful gift that you can give somebody else the opportunity to be of assistance to you. And the therapy thing, often you get to have a different conversation with a different person. That's a wonderful place to start. And one other really quick thing, which goes back to something John said earlier, be okay with disappointing others, because we often sort of live our life based on what other people expect of us. And at some point, I think it can be a really good thing to just choose to do something knowing it's going to disappoint somebody else, but it's actually a good thing for me to do.
That's a great answer. So thank you for that. And that's a great lesson for us all, and a perfect lesson to leave us on. I want to thank everyone so much for being on the call today. It's been a really, really good podcast. It's been very dense, and there's a lot of info in there. And I want to thank everyone for being on. And I want to thank John for being on again. And I want to thank Legos for being on again. And Danette and Graham, as always, all stars. As always, you can watch this podcast on YouTube. The link will be in the podcast. And if you watch it on YouTube, you can listen to it as a podcast. The link will be in the description. We'll be chatting again next week. And as always, have a magical week, everybody.
Thanks, Jez.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks,
Thanks,
Jez.
everyone.
Great
That was
session again.
awesome.